Do do do, theme song. Do do do, I'm broke so this is my theme song. Do do do, just imagine this is an awesome theme song. Do do, theme song. Hello, welcome to Left of the Box. Bonjour, bienvenue. I'm Sandy. This is one of those videos where it's really hard to figure out how to start it properly. This isn't about the news. It's not about anything social media wise. What it's about is actually the full story of how I became a content creator. I figure, I've given bits and pieces throughout different videos, but I've never done one video where I kind of laid it all out. And the reason I want to do it now is because the main inspiration for me starting my channel was Michael Brooks. And July 20th will be the 2-year anniversary of his passing. I just want to put out there how much he influenced me and how important he was to me in starting all of this. This will be another video where I'm just telling my story about my experience, and I hope that maybe through me telling this, other people may be inspired, or other people may see something of themselves in me, or have been through similar situations, or I hope I can resonate with some people out there. And who knows, maybe one day they'll get into content creating, or they'll get involved in politics, and someday, if enough people do that, we can really change the direction we're currently going in. It all began when, back in 2016, there was an election going on down in the States. I'm sure many of you are probably aware of it. The Trump-Hillary election was going on. And up until that point, I would say that I was politically engaged to a point. I didn't know the nitty-gritty, but I was interested in politics. I was interested in global relationships, other cultures around the world, and how their governments worked. But I never did anything like sat down and studied anything. It was usually just documentaries I saw on TV. And I hate to say it, but I really wasn't plugged into Canadian politics. I didn't know much of what was going on, just very, very surface level. And at that time in my life, I had reached a certain point of stability that I hadn't had before. I had a good paying full-time job that helped me to become stable. And for the first time, I was able to work on me. So much of my life has just been mental health chaos, living in dire poverty, trying to survive, that when you're in those situations, politics isn't really at the front of your mind. It's not something that's driving you, even though politics is the answer for people in those situations. But when you're so busy trying to just tread water, it's hard for you to, swim against the current at the same time. 2016 came around. I was a little bit more stable. I was watching more politics on YouTube, and I got hooked on the election down in the States. And I say hooked because it really was just entertainment. I didn't see it as being serious because I couldn't fathom Trump winning, at least not at first. He was a joke. And during that time, I came across clips of TYT on YouTube. I started watching more and more of them, and eventually started watching their evening main show and things of that sort, and became really engaged with TYT. The election of Trump happens, and that hit me hard. A friend and I had actually gone to a independent theater here, movie theater, to watch it live on the big screen with a bunch of other people. And again, we were just treating it as entertainment because even at that point, I thought, yeah, sure, there's a chance Trump will win, but it has to be Hillary. Hillary's going to win. At that time, I didn't even know that much about her. And I thought, you know what? She'd be a perfectly fine president. The results start coming in, and my friend and I, we started getting more and more concerned until finally he got an update on the phone before it showed up on the big screen that one too many states had voted in favor of Trump and that there was no possible pathway for Hillary to win. At that point, we headed back to his place and turned on TYT and kind of, I can't think of the word when you just kind of sit around together in this horror of what has just happened. In my mind, there was a thought that this didn't really happen. This wasn't real. There was going to be a way out of it. Something had to be done because somebody as incompetent and horrible as Donald Trump can't become president of the United States. And the next day I was in work. My best friend was my boss at the time, and we were talking about it because he was also politically engaged. And that was the first time we really got into a serious argument. It wasn't about, Trump winning or not. It was about some of the reasons as to why, because my friend is also more left-leaning and thought this election was horrible as well. I just remember being so upset that here's a woman who is probably the most qualified candidate when you look at her resume for this position. She's competent. She can think straight. Again, I didn't know all the background details of some of the horrible things she was, but on surface level, she presented as somebody who would be a good president, who would be able to get the job done. And the fact that she could have all these qualifications, have all of this experience, and yet when lined up against a man who was a buffoon, had no experience, probably can't even tie his shoes, and she still lost. That just ripped into me so hard, and I got so mad when my friend was trying to dismiss that was the reason. And of course now, many of us know there wasn't just one reason, and one reason, any one reason was responsible, because it was such a narrow margin that it could have been that. It could have been the emails. It could have been Comey. It could have been any one of those things. Had they not happened, she might have gone through. So the fact that her gender played a role in it, to me at that point, was one of the main reasons why so many people voted against her. And had that not been a factor, she probably would have won. Just like if any of those other things had been a factor, she probably would have won. In the next couple of weeks after that, I was really pondering things. And it really struck me at the time, because I hadn't realized it until that point, how much more engaged I was with this election down in the States than I had been with any Canadian election. The thought of going to a big theater to watch the results of a Canadian election, the thought of it just never occurred to me. But part of it is because our elections are not that much of a spectacle. We've never had somebody as horrible as Trump as a possible winner of the election. And I found really, I just had never been terribly engaged with the actual policies. I knew I didn't like the liberals, the conservatives, that it was always the same thing, election after election, that we would vote, toggle back and forth between the two, get the same results no matter what. And the NDP would probably be a better party, but there was always never any chance of them getting in. And with that kind of mentality, it's easy to not want to pay that much attention because it feels like there's nothing that can be done to change it. But the election of Trump was a wake-up call to me, because I knew if he could get elected down there, it would only be a matter of time before somebody just as bad as him got elected up here. And I wanted to try everything possible to make sure that didn't happen. I was still watching a lot of TYT at that time. They're very encouraging on getting people, motivating people to get involved, to start engaging in politics, to start learning more, to maybe run for things. I think it started to really kind of wear into me that this is something I need to do. I can't just sit back and watch my country burn. I need to do something. And with the realization that I didn't know much about politics, in order for me to be able to change the system, I first had to know how that system worked. Because at that time, I was wondering, is activism the answer, or is getting involved in politics the answer? And I wasn't too sure. I came across an online course for the Government of Canada that really laid it out for me. Took the course, I got 98% in it, and it was a good course, and it taught me everything about the federal government and even a little bit about provincial and municipal and how they're all connected. And it was really helpful for me to know how our system here in Canada worked. And nothing was set in stone at that point. I was still kind of pondering what I wanted to do. When the provincial election here happened, I got involved because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to see what it was like to be involved with a campaign. What was everything that had to be done? There were campaign schools for women, day courses that you could take here that I signed up for as well. the provincial election came around, and fortunately, in my riding provincially, our MPP is NDP, and that's the party that I wound up supporting because they're the ones that tend to be more left-leaning than the other parties. I got involved with that campaign and I did a lot of door knocking. I went to a lot of the rallies, spoke to a lot of people, and I found everything I came across, nothing scared me. So I have a background in theater, being on stage, presenting things. When I'm passionate about something, I'm really good at expressing it in a way that people really resonate with it. And even at some of the town halls that I was at, I'd end up talking to some people about poverty because I live with poverty. I remember one time I was talking about poverty, mentioning how expensive it is to be poor, how many more expenses people with poverty have, and how it's not right that we're forced into these cycles. And the woman next to me, she looked over at me and she said, "Thank you for saying what I have never been able to express before." I knew I had a gift when it came to communicating these messages. After the provincial election, which was successful and the NDP candidate was reelected and she's currently our MPP again, I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. The federal election was coming up. I knew there was no candidate for this area because in that course that I had taken, I had actually sat down and had a bit of an interview with the person who was the previous candidate to ask her about her experiences and things of that sort. And I knew she wasn't interested in trying to run again. So I knew it would be open. And I thought, this is what I can do. I can raise my platform. I can get into politics, like even just being able to campaign and speaking to people. I felt even that would help. Like even if I didn't win, just being able to get the message out there, getting more people engaged, getting more people feeling like there's a chance of change when you have somebody who is a powerful communicator on stage. To prepare for my eventual run as a nominee and a candidate, I was doing a lot of research on different things, but also I needed to get some experience debating or just learn a bit about debating because I've never really had like a sit-down debate with anyone before. And I knew with a lot of the right-wingers and conservatives, debating them probably wouldn't be that difficult, just given, the arguments they would have. But I knew that a lot of the times it doesn't matter how right you are. It's a matter of how much you can get the audience to resonate with you when you're talking. And I thought the best way for me to learn how to debate was to watch different debates online with right-wingers in particular, because I had always heard up to that point that right-wingers, they're so good at debating, like, ooh, they're so scary, they're really good at it, and on and on and on. And so I thought, okay, I will sit down and I will watch these right-wingers debate. Wow, they're horrible. They're all really horrible. Like, they're not good at debating. Because for a lot of them, what it is that they have their talking points and they stick to them and they keep a constant flow of the language going out of their mouth, even though they don't necessarily know what they're about to say. They just keep this constant stream of words flowing out of their mouth because then it's really hard for anyone else to interrupt them when they're speaking. And this gives them all the platform they need to keep on talking about their talking points. And when they're not interrupted because they're not giving any opening for people to actually break in and talk to it, then it gives the appearance that they're the confident ones, that they're the ones that know what they're talking about, and that they must be right because nobody is really challenging them in the way that they should be challenged because they just keep on talking. And while they're doing this, they look around, they have that confidence, they impress that, and the more the other person struggles to try to get into the conversation, the more weak they look when it comes to trying to relay their points. And so as long as the person who is the talking the most in the debate, as long as they don't really allow an opening for anyone else, then no matter what they're saying, they will come across as the correct speaker. So I was really disappointed with these right-wingers because if it wasn't for the audiences that they had, where most likely there were people kind of planted in there to cheer for them and things of that sort, if you really just stripped down their arguments to the bare bones and what they were saying, you'd learn that they weren't saying much of anything. Their arguments were horrible. They had nothing to back it up, no stats. They were lying a lot of the times. And I found that wasn't a good way for me to necessarily learn how to debate. But then I came across a debate of Sam Seder and Charlie Kirk. And watching that debate, watching Sam, I thought, that's it. Sam has it. He knows how to debate these right-wingers. He was able to stick to his facts, not take the bait, bring in new information, stayed calm. Because a lot of the times when I saw right-wingers debating, especially like on college campuses and things of that sort, one of their goals was to simply make the other person upset. And a lot of people on the left who went into these debates with a chip on their shoulder. They were vulnerable to emotional attacks. And as soon as they started to lose their temper, they lose the debate. But Sam wasn't like that. He was super smart, well-spoken, stayed calm, and I thought, that is it. That's the debate style I need to watch. And so I started to watch a lot of Sam Seder's debates with libertarians. And I know far more about libertarians right now than I ever had hoped to learn. At this point, I can probably argue their side better than any libertarian could possibly do it. And also, since I've been studying Sam Seder's debate style, I could probably do a decent job going up against him. And of course, when I found Sam Seder through the debates, that's when I also found out about the Majority Report, and I started to watch the Majority Report that introduced me to Michael Brooks. You know, even though I was just new to finding out who he was, as soon as you saw him, as soon as you heard him speak, you knew there was something different about him, that he had a much deeper understanding of politics and how it's connected to the world. And I became a big fan of the Majority Report at that time. I filled out the paperwork for the vetting process, made my intentions known. That was the beginning of a really devastating experience. This isn't the time for that story of what happened during that campaign. And it wasn't just that I lost. There were other things kind of going on that when the nomination meeting happened and I lost by just a few votes, it broke me in a way I didn't know was possible. I had been working towards it for a year and a half. And like I said, there were some things that had happened during that really just made me lose faith in myself, lose faith in the universe, question my belief in pretty much anything. It destroyed a part of me. And I didn't think there would be any way of recovering from that. After that nomination meeting, I went home and for a few days, I completely collapsed within myself. Every waking moment, this is going to sound ridiculous, I had to start watching the MCU, the Marvel movies, from Iron Man all the way through, because I needed that distraction in my brain. I needed something else that I could focus on, and that was the only thing that could kind of pull me out of the devastation I was currently in. So every waking moment for the next few days, I had on the Marvel movies. I just watched them in order. If I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning because I couldn't sleep, I'd put it on where I left off. And then if I fell back to sleep, turn it off. And as soon as I woke up again, put it back on. I couldn't function. I couldn't do anything. I didn't want to talk to anyone. And at that time in the theaters, it was the second Spider-Man movie plus Endgame was also on. The nomination meeting was the Wednesday evening, and so I had watched them straight through. So on the weekend, I went to the theater one day and watched both of those as well. Watching Endgame in that state nearly broke me a couple times, because in it they were talking about failure. How do you overcome that failure? And I had a really hard time with that. There were a couple times in that movie I nearly cried, which was not at the same point as everyone else in the theater, because the other time was when Black Widow came across Hawkeye doing his horrible stuff, and she told him that there might be a way to fix this, and he said, don't give me hope. And that is something that really hit me, because that's something I feel a lot. The hardest thing with mental health issues isn't finding hope, isn't having hope. It's having that hope and then having it taken away. And so much in my life, I've had that happen to me, that the thing that probably scared me the most at that time was recovering, was getting over this. Because in order for me to get past everything I had just gone through would require me to hope again. And I couldn't do that. Slowly, I started getting back into the real world, talking to people again, going out to some of the groups I'm involved with. I had no job at that point because I had quit my job in anticipation for this campaign run. But to be fair, I was going to quit it anyway, because the job that I had, as good as it had been to me, there had been some massive changes in the office. And as I've learned later in life, having autism and having those types of changes happen to an environment that you're comfortable in, it doesn't go well. And I was struggling to maintain myself at that job. So I knew I was going to quit, but I quit earlier than I would have in anticipation for this campaign run. I had no job. I had no direction. In the fall after the campaign, the nomination, the election, in lead up to the election, I remembered thinking a lot of the same things I thought during the 2016 election with Trump and Hillary after he won, is that maybe there's still a chance she can become president. You know, maybe if the Electoral College doesn't certify him, or maybe this or maybe that. And I actually went through a lot of that with my election as well. Like, I really admire the person who did become the candidate, so I have nothing bad to say against her. She's a wonderful person. And I kept on wondering, you know, maybe she'll step out of it for a good reason, gets a job somewhere else, realizes this isn't for her. Maybe something will happen and I can still become the candidate. The closer we got to the actual election, and then there's a certain cutoff at some points, and then it's like just the realization that no, it's not going to happen. So in the fall, after a couple months of just brutal depression, I knew it was time I had to try to start looking for a job, that sort of thing. And I did. I applied for so many different jobs that I was perfectly qualified for, like to a T. They say a lot of people, especially people with autism, they say to themselves that they have to match like 80 to 90% of the job qualifications in order to apply for a job, whereas, you know, really should be 50-50. And there were jobs that I applied for that I fit every single one of their qualifications, yet I couldn't even get an interview. And the main reason being, I never finished college. I don't have a diploma. And when you don't have a diploma, and most job applications happen online, as soon as I'm not able to tick that box, my whole application kind of gets dismissed before any human eyes even see it. Even with the job I had, it was through a recommendation from my friend who turned out to be my boss, but she didn't know would happen at the time. And that was how I was able to get that job. And so without having somebody in a company that had a job that suited my talent, there was virtually no possible way for me to get a job. And I applied to so many places and was rejected so many times. And at some point, I stopped trying and I just started coasting in life, waiting for the next kind of drop in my mental health, a drop severe enough that would potentially end things for me. I still watched TYT and The Majority Report regularly. I had become a member of TYT at that point. And watching those two shows, I wouldn't say it gave me hope, but it just made me feel better, knowing that there were people out there fighting, talking to others, encouraging others to get involved. They were making small differences in different areas. Seeing Michael Brooks talk really helped a lot. I actually wasn't a huge fan of Michael Brooks on The Majority Report. I would often get frustrated because he'd be cutting Sam off when Sam was trying to make a really good point, and Michael would be kind of like trying to interject a joke. Like, could you just let Sam finish his point? It's when he was doing the shows, or when he was doing his show, the Michael Brooks show, or when I saw him at events and stuff, and he was just talking about, like, from his heart about different things. To me, that is when he shined. That is just when his brilliance came out, and it was so apparent just how special he was. And that watching him on his show was the best person to see while I was in that state, because I felt if anyone was going to make a difference, it'd be him. Oh boy, I know there's no possible way I'm going to get through this next bit without getting emotional, so please bear with me. And I want you to know, I'm okay. It's just, I usually feel like, oh yeah, I can talk about this without a problem, but then as soon as the words come out of my mouth, I'll completely crack. So just be aware, I might be a bit of a mess, but it's okay. I'm comfortable doing this, and I'm not ashamed of the mess I'm about to make. Almost a year had passed from the nomination meeting that had just completely destroyed me. And I remember at that point, I was just so full of anger. I had no direction, no idea what I was going to do with my life. I felt like there was no way I could get a job. There was no way I could ever make a difference. I was still really hurt from the whole situation. But then one day I'm watching Michael, and he said something that really kind of struck me. He was able to quiet the noise in my head just long enough for a simple question to come through. And it was, why am I still here? That is somewhat coded language. There's a lot of people who I'm sure kind of get the gist, but for those who are blissfully unaware of what that can mean, I was asking, why hadn't I killed myself yet? I've tried a few times. I wanted to die. Every day there's a voice in my head telling me how much I want to die. So why am I still here? And because of Michael Brooks pausing me just that long and making me think, I found out the answer was because despite how much I hated my life, I really like who I am. And the things about me that I really like, my humor, my drive, my need to want to fight for others, to be a voice for the voiceless, to let people know about poverty and mental health issues, to let people know what we were going through, the integrity that I had, the need to just want to keep on going one day after the next, after the next. And it is that part of me that has kept me alive all of these years, despite the voices in my head constantly telling me how horrible my life is and how much I want to die. The constant battle of crying myself to sleep, wishing I would die overnight, and waking up disappointed that I hadn't. And for years, being able to stand up to that because of this part of me that is stronger than that. The part of me that I had lost after that nomination meeting. And so then I had to ask myself, if I gave up on that part of myself now, then who would I really be? If I didn't acknowledge that part of me, then really I had already died. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. To have that part of me go, I wasn't ready for it yet. And so in that moment, because of Michael Brooks, I reclaimed that part of me. It had never really left. It had always still been there. But I had just pushed it down so far because I was afraid of hoping again. I was afraid of trying again. But I knew living a life without that part of myself would be far worse than anything else I had already been through. At that moment, I knew I couldn't give up on myself yet. And then it came to a question of, okay, so that part of me is back. Now what? What do I do? How do I get myself out there? I'm a broke nobody. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody cares to really hear what I have to say. I knew politics was a no-go. I knew there was no way that I'd be going forward in that. So how would I do this? Well, why not the same way as Michael? And that was the moment my YouTube show, Left of the Box, came to be. It wasn't an instantaneous thing, but I just knew in that moment, okay, it's going to be a YouTube show. That I'm somehow going to put together a YouTube show. And over the next few weeks, it's learning about it. It's trying to figure out a name. And I thought of the name because back when I was looking for a job, I had made these cheesy little business cards with my contact information on it. And on it, I had a box with the light bulb to represent thinking outside the box. And I remember looking at that, and then it just clicked. Yeah, I'm thinking outside the box, but to the left of it. So left of the box. And that is an awesome name. And I'm so glad I found it. And when I found it, I was so relieved it wasn't already taken. At least not by anything I could find. I had a friend who knew a little bit about YouTube content creating. She was already doing some content of her own, not in politics, in a different area. So she was able to help me out a lot. And then I had another friend who was really supportive of me and, would help me with my scripts. And when I would tell other people about it, my closer friends and stuff, all the reactions, generally speaking, were positive. I didn't get anyone saying, they were probably thinking it to some extent, because it's like I knew it'd be a long shot. I knew, like, trying to be successful on YouTube when I have zero experience making videos, editing videos, I knew that would be nearly impossible. But I did everything I could to learn. And on November 1st, 2020, is when I uploaded my channel trailer, which took me way too long to make, was horribly edited. It's a mess. It's a hot mess. And it's still available on my channel. But that was the first video I had ever made. And I really wish I had had the opportunity to thank Michael, because that moment that happened where he was able to reach out to me and silence my mind and get that change in my life to happen, it was right before he passed away. So I never had a chance to thank him for it, for his part in me doing what I'm doing. When I made that first video, I couldn't imagine at that point where I'd be now. I didn't have a Twitter account before then, so I joined Twitter and found I had been missing out. Twitter is my jam. I really like Twitter. It fits my mental health. Like, it's punchy, it's quippy, it's sarcastic, it's all over the place. But I had always shied away from any kind of social media because I have a hard time socializing with people, and I just started making videos. And at first I hated it. I really was not a fan of making these videos. It was frustrating. I was having massive issues with audio not being synced, and somebody who's OCD and not having sync video is really not good. I was trying to find my voice, the style in which I wanted to present videos, how much humor I wanted to add into it, what kind of content would I be creating. Like, all of this I was exploring at first. And I got on Twitter. I started meeting people like the Letterhack, who helped me to rediscover my talent for art, which, as I said in that video that I made about that journey way back when, rediscovering that talent, that was the good thing I needed in my life to keep going. It was also through Twitter and meeting other people and meeting other small content creators and watching their content that I started to learn more about who I am, that I'm non-binary. And it seems so silly to me now to finally clue into it, because I had pretty much been saying it out loud since I was a teenager. And I had never kind of connected the dots before. So I also have a video about that. And basically what it boiled down to was, since I was assigned female at birth and I present female, therefore I must be female. But as soon as I took how I present out of the equation and just really focused on how I felt, it became so obvious to me that I was non-binary. And just looking back at my life, and it's like, it was there the entire time. But it was because I was being exposed to different people, different non-binary folks, because I knew people who were gender fluid and non-binary, transgender, and all of that, but I wasn't able to relate to any of them. They were different than me. But then talking and seeing other people that I could see myself in and relate to, it really just kind of clued it in. And the instant it clicked, I've never doubted it one bit. I am full confident, 100% sure this is who I am and this is who I've always been. And it took a bit longer for me to clue in about the autism. Because again, I knew people who were autistic, who were on the spectrum, but I never saw myself in them. It wasn't until I started hearing stories from other autistic people where it's like, that anecdote of their life is like, that's from me. That happened to me. That's my life. Like, there were things I already knew. I've known I'm dyslexic ever since I was a child. I knew about the OCD, the ADHD, even though they've never officially been diagnosed. There are some things that don't need to be diagnosed for you to know it's a thing. And once I started to understand more about what autism was, again, it just became so obvious that that is who I've been my entire life. And even though I've never officially been diagnosed, I probably never will be, just given the cost, because Canadian healthcare is not completely free. What I say is, you can have a broken arm, a fracture or something, and sometimes it's just a small break, and you might need a doctor to do some tests and diagnose it for you to know it's a break. But when the bone is sticking out of the skin, you don't need a doctor to tell you your arm is broken. And that's kind of the level that I realized I was at with autism. Like, it wasn't subtle. I don't do subtle very well. And just looking back at my life and how that's affected me and my growth and my relationships and my social interactions, and yeah, learning that bit about me has really changed how I see the world and how I interact. In this short time that I had started Twitter, in less than a year, all of this was happening. With my channel, with Twitter, all of this realization about who I am happened, and it just kind of blew my mind. The year anniversary of my show came up. I had a special show with Dan from the internet. He came onto my show for the second time as the special 1-year anniversary. And even though, I felt I had a little bit of success, there were people who would contact me and thank me for my content, or, let me know that I was able to look at something from a perspective they had never considered before, or speak truth to something they had never really heard. And I felt the videos I was making were really good, but I was just unable to break through the algorithms. And at that point, I'd really started to believe that it was too late for me. You always hear everyone, whenever they're talking, it's always, the next generation, they're our future. They see what the youth are doing, the high school students or the college kids right now. They see what they're doing, and they're the ones that give people hope of change in the world, that it's on the next generations now, that they're going to be the game changers and things of that sort. And you just keep on hearing that message over and over again. And at some point, you really do start to believe that by a certain age, if you haven't made your mark, then you're never going to. And I felt I had passed that point, that it was too late for me, that nobody would ever really take me seriously, that the most I could hope for is just maintaining this little channel of mine, maybe getting involved in my art more, which I do plan on doing. I am still working on getting my portrait business together. But I felt for me to really have a voice online, it just wasn't going to happen. So it was really important for me to support other people, younger people that I came across, who I felt really had that chance. And Dan Evans, the person that I brought back on my show for that 1-year anniversary, he's one of them. The first time I saw him on TYT, I just saw something in him. The same spark, the intelligence. I'll never compare him to Michael Brooks, but I do see him as being on the same level. And the potential he has is extraordinary. And I see that in him. So for me, as soon as I got online and on Twitter, it was very important for me to encourage him any way I could in the limited capacity that I had, because it was too late for me. But he's just at the beginning of his journey. Like, he's probably well done a journey by now, but there's still so much more ahead of him. He is going to have a big impact on the world someday. There's just something about him that I see this. I had really settled into this idea that it was too late for me. Too late for my channel. It didn't matter how good my videos were. Never really going to take off. I'm never really going to make a mark on anything. Because even though here I am, a Canadian channel and doing politics and a non-mailed person, non-binary female presenting person, because I'd always hear other people in politics like, oh, we need more women in politics, or we need more non-male or more queer people. And meanwhile, I'm like, I'm right here and you guys aren't paying attention to me. Yes, I'm shouting you out, the serfs. You're one of them. You say it all the time and I've tried to reach out to you, but I never hear anything back. But I know what it is. It's just trying to break through the noise, even to the serfs. It's like, they get so many messages, so many notifications. To get noticed by them, by anyone, is really difficult. Especially when, at my 1-year anniversary, I had maybe 1,000 subscribers to my channel. But I would always just really find it frustrating when I would hear these men talking about how we need more diverse voices in politics. And I'm like, God damn it, I'm right here. But it was right at the 1-year anniversary of my show, though, that I was watching TYT and they started making the announcements that they were looking for content creators for YouTube. And I'm like, wow, I'm a content creator for YouTube. And I looked at the job requirements. I'm like, well, I kind of fit all those job requirements as my autism demands that I do before I apply for any job. I also knew it would be a long shot. Put together an audition video and I sent it. And the first time I sent it, I didn't even bother sending a resume because it's like, there's nothing on my resume really that would apply towards this. Like, I have 8-9 years of experience in supply chain. So like, unless they need help with their merchandising, there's not really much that my resume would help with. So really my resume was my video to show that, I had the ability to make and edit videos, the equipment needed. My channel had my political views on it, all that sort of stuff. And then I'm like, maybe I should have also added a resume. So I ended up resending it with a resume. And kind of adding just my YouTube experience on it as well. And, I handed it in. And at that time, I got in there a part-time job that paid really well. That was a good environment for me as well. And a few months had gone by and I hadn't heard anything. And the way that I sent them my YouTube video was having it unlisted on my channel and then sending them the link. And so then I could see that there were no new views on it after I had watched it a couple times to make sure that it was okay. So at some point I just kind of like, okay, maybe it's in there one of these cases. I just got lost in the noise. They probably got so many applications, or maybe they can't hire Canadians. I don't know. And it kind of left my brain. The new job I had, if I had found this back when I was originally looking for work after the whole disaster with the campaign, it would have been perfect. And then I would have never been doing any of this anyway. Because it was a good environment for me, really supportive people there, good paying job. But I remember working there, and even with all of that, and even though I was extremely good at what I was doing, I just remember thinking, I don't want to be doing this. The thought of going back into another job where it doesn't really feel like I'm doing much in the way of making a difference, that I'm just sitting there, clocking my hours, going home, not really having the energy to do much else. I was worried that if I got another job like that, my growth would end. All this growing that I was doing would come to an end. And that worried me. But then, out of the blue, I got contacted by TYT to let me know that they saw my video and that they were going to give me a chance. Because I remember, back when I was checking the video for different views and not seeing anything, I would have been okay if I had just saw that there was that one extra view. Whether they took me at that time, that would be neither here nor there, because at least then I would have been considered. And that is really all I wanted, was to at least be considered. And I found out not only had I been considered, but they're going to give me a chance. I found out, even at my age, that it wasn't too late for me, that I still have the ability to potentially make a difference, to have this platform to be heard. And it's really important, and I need people to hear this. Yes, the youth are our future, but right now, we are their present. We have the ability to change now. And it doesn't matter your age. You still have the ability to make that difference, to make that change. If you keep on trying, if you keep on going for the opportunities, and I know how difficult it is to hear this, because I have that same brain frame of, you can be presented with all the opportunities in the world, and it doesn't mean you're going to succeed. And even though I have this job with Rebel HQ and TYT right now, that still doesn't mean I'm going to succeed. I still have a lot of work to do. The serfs still don't even know who I am. And I still don't know if I'm going to succeed at this, but I am trying my hardest. But just to have that opportunity to know that the content that I'm making is good. It really was just that I wasn't breaking through the noise, the validation of that. It was so much more than I ever thought was possible. So here I am now, a year and a half after starting my channel, 2 years from the point of knowing that I'm going to start my content creating, and to see all that I've accomplished in that time. Even though my brain will still fight with me and it will still say that, no, you haven't succeeded or accomplished anything because, you still have under 2,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel. You still have, just a handful of patrons, which is linked in the description box below for anyone who's interested in supporting me. And sometimes, okay, I'll be a little conceited here. Sometimes I feel like I'm not given enough credit for how much I have improved in just this year and a half of making videos. Because if you go back and you look at my first channel trailer or my first couple videos that I posted, and you look at the content that I'm making right now, like, that's some really good growth there. And the fact that I had zero experience with making videos, editing, anything before I started this, and everything I'm doing up to this point has really just happened in a year and a half, I think I'm doing pretty damn good. But like I said, there's still this constant battle in my head. The turning point of all of that to get me here was that moment from Michael Brooks. And without him, I know I wouldn't have survived this long. I know I wouldn't be making it to this point where I've had videos on Rebel HQ. Hundreds of thousands of people see my videos. I'm still waiting for a single one of the videos on my channel to break over 600 views, but that's a different... Canadian politics, not exactly clickbait. I still struggle with my mental health daily. Like, even though Michael helped me in that moment, it's not like I got cured. It's not like, suddenly all my mental health problems are solved. I still have far more days of hearing that voice in my head, reminding me how much I want to die versus days that I don't. But because of Michael Brooks, because of Sam Cedar, because of TYT, and everything that has happened in the past 2 years, I have gone days at a time without that voice. And I don't kid myself. I know I'm still at risk. Like, I'm not at risk right now. Like, I'm not in immediate risk. There's no intent or anything. But I know, if I'm just thinking rationally about my mental health, there is still a strong likelihood in the future, should different things converge at the same time, that I'm at risk of ending things. I learned the hard way when when your bank is calling you to try to sell you life insurance, don't bother asking them if it covers suicide. I'm really sorry I said that out loud. But I was curious. Because, yeah, I'm not at risk right now, and I can tell you, I can say easily for the next 2 weeks, for the next 3 weeks, I'm not at risk. But I don't know where I'm going to be 3 weeks from now, because again, there's a lot that goes on in my head. There's a lot of things that can happen, and it's like any other disease that you can have or an illness you can have. I maintain it as best as I can. I have medication for it. I have coping mechanisms, some which really need to be updated. Been going through a lot of anxiety and stuff lately. But I know I'm not out of the woods, and I won't be. I don't know, maybe I'll never be. But I do know for certain I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for Michael. And even though at times I do still worry that I'm not going to succeed in any way that I hope. Really, when I started this channel, I couldn't have imagined where I'd be in just a year and a half. So who knows where I'll be in another year and a half. Just about a week ago, I hung the pictures that I drew of Michael, the ones that I gave to Sam in the Majority Report and Michael's sister Leisha last year as a gift, thanking them, some portrait drawings that I drew. I have some prints of them that I made for myself. And the Letterhack also had his designs available, and so I bought an art print from him as well. And about a week ago, I hung them up on my wall, and they're on my studio wall. So whenever I'm really starting to doubt myself again, I can look up at him and be reminded of that moment where he was able to break through to me and give me some motivation to keep going, to keep fighting the way I always have been. And I will be doing more videos talking more about my mental health and stuff, because I understand what it's like to get so mad at people who say, I understand what you're going through. And I say that because so many people over my life have said, oh, I understand what it's like to have mental health issues. You know, I went through a rough patch and, you know, I got through it. And it's like, no, you don't understand, because in order for you to understand, you would still have to be there. And I can say I understand that because I am still there. I am still with the mental health issues, you know, the depression, everything I'm going through, it is still there. Every video I make is that much harder for me to make than a normal person. Every time I put myself out there. And I can do that because of that part in me that has kept me alive all of these years, that has kept me going. This inner strength that I have that it's hard to put into words. And it's the inner strength other people have that they don't realize they have, who are suffering with mental health issues right now. When you have a voice in your head telling you all the time how much you want to die, and yet every day you wake up and you make it through. And it's not easy, and you might not do what you want to do, but somehow you make it to the next day. The amount of strength it takes to fight those urges, to keep on going, to combat that nightmare day after day after day. It's amazing in a way that words can't simply state it. And if you are struggling with those thoughts right now, just know you are stronger, far stronger than you believe. In all those years where it felt like you've been doing nothing, where it felt like you were just living hour by hour, wasting time, not growing, not doing anything, all of those years, you weren't doing nothing, you weren't wasting your time. You were busy surviving. You were doing what it took to get to the next day, and the next, and the next. And every day you make it, there is the possibility of a change in the current that is keeping you so far from everything. And even then, it won't be easy. Even now, I still have a hard time with the concept of hope. There's still a lot in my life that I feel like I need to succeed at something. But at least because of Michael and Sam and TYT, I have a chance to make it to that day where I will once again know what hope is. Thank you, Sam, and everyone at the Majority Report. Thank you, Jank, Anna, John, JR, Dan, everyone over at TYT. Thank you, all of you, for each part you played in getting me to where I am today. And Michael, if you're out there, thank you for everything you did for me. I hope to someday be able to thank all the people that I just said in person. I have kind of thanked Sam. It was a bit of a mess when I met him the one time. And I didn't say all of this to him at the time, of course, but I've tried my best to express my appreciation for him through the drawing and that I gave him that you can see in the Boston video that I made. Okay, deep breath. So that is the full story of how I started my show, how I started my content creating, and Michael's role within it. I hope, I keep on saying I hope people do this and that and the other thing. After everything I just said about hope, I'm still saying that, but you know, it's a language thing. It's a different kind of hope, and I know a lot of you know what I mean when I say it. It's a different kind of hope. But, you know, I hope that this has resonated with some people, that for some people they've heard something that they've been needing to hear, or that it has inspired people, or who knows, maybe it's encouraged somebody to start something, and in a year and a half, that thing has taken them to a place they could have never dreamed of. You know, just to know that I've done some good in the world. Yeah, so how do you end a talk like this? Like, how do you put a cap on this? By hitting the like and subscribe button. Following me on Twitter. You know, I'm there an awful lot. And you can become a patron and help me continue this channel by the link in the description box below. And, you know, there's the wish list to help me buy things for my studio. Nobody has yet to buy anything off of that wish list for my studio. So, you know, you can be the first one to go and do it now. Because that is just pretty much probably the perfect way for a YouTuber to end a video like that. This is a crazy world we're in, and there are going to be a lot of really bad days in the future, but there will be better days as well. Let's keep on trying to work towards making it so that there's more better days than there are bad. Thank you, everyone who has supported me this far. I appreciate everyone who has had faith in me. The people who've already signed up to be patrons. Yeah, thank you. People willing to put me in their budget in these times just means the world to me. I'm not done yet. I still have a lot of work to do, and I fully intend to do it. Salut, à la prochaine. Thank you for watching and stay tuned. I'm Sandy, wishing your tomorrow is better than your today.